What was your first impression when you heard my music, and do you think that led us to eventually hook up today?
Well, that was your choice, and I'm glad you did. You're a professional free player. You have it together. You know what you're doing. You know, you can tell when we don't have 4 bars. We have 4 minutes, 4 seconds. You know, you have your own voice, and you're good at projecting. I mean, this is all from today. Because, we're doing a liner notes is not the same as, reality. And it was great to play. And, it's good. It's become, free jazz has become not famous, but it's more, it's easier for people open up to it a little more than they used to. I was, just telling that story about Coltrane and Titans of the tenor sax and how they walked out until he started Favorite Things, and then they came back into it's 2,500 people, It's a hard sell, free jazz, as is Arnold Schoenberg. It's a hard sell. Somebody who does it well, I have a lot of respect for, and I know what it means to do that. I started out with free jazz. We in the lofts, 68, 69, 70, we played all, Ascension was the model. That was the one that we had, me, Brecker, Lenny White, Bob Moses, a lot of cats are still around. And we were hit by Ascension, which really was like very powerful. And so that was kind of the model. You're young, you have a model that you go after. And that was it for a couple of years. And then, it got absorbed by fusion, and there's a whole history here and everything like that. But your age puts you into that area where free jazz was obligatory. You had to do it, and it became more than just, we'll just play a little bit. It became a way to play, which you and some of your partners that you're having on this project know very well.
Throughout the years, you played some duos with other fellow saxophonists, correct?
Which one?
You played with Grossman.
Yeah, Grossman was with Elvin Jones.
With Elvin Jones, you played with Joe Lovano, Ravi Coltrane. Mm-hmm. So that format, playing with a fellow saxophonist, is something familiar that you feel comfortable with.
Oh, I love it. It's great. You bounce off, which we were doing all the whole. And today that was everything. That was the name of the game. Bounce off, bounce in, bounce over, bounce. All different directions. You love playing with a guy on your own instrument because you know something that they know, and no one else knows.
Absolutely.
So and beyond description. So I always jump at the chance to play with another saxophone player. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's more difficult because they want a trumpet or something like that. But doing what we did today was, that's the old shit, man. The free shit, the real deal.
You became. Can I go on?
Sure. Yeah,
okay.
It's up to you.
You became a major voice on the soprano saxophone. Mm-hmm. Me as a tenor player, I think, well, does he regret occasionally? Because I love the tenor so much as you sound wonderful on the soprano. I wonder if you miss the tenor voice or you've became detached and grew past that.
Well, I stopped tenor in 1980, 15 years. I played only soprano. I made a decision that I'm going to get really good on something. And there was an open field. There weren't so many guys. It was Lacey and not even Wayne yet in the 80s, not Coltrane and Bechet was, I didn't know who he was. But when I decided to do this, it was with great, what's the word? Not fear, but apprehension about giving up the big horn. What am I going to do when I have impressions? The signature tune of Coltrane, bebop, the 32 bars. How am I going to keep doing that? Because that was a big part of my shtick, was playing like that, with Elvin and with mime. In my case, I was with the guys who did the shit, The soprano is a very particular sound, and it's very special. And I figured I could try to get on it, and I probably could say something that was unique to me. And eventually that happened. Within 2 years, by 1983, the soprano became another instrument. I could finally stay in tune for the most part. I could, do all the pitfalls. I was able to go through them and over them. And so the soprano became more viable as an instrument. And the group Quest with Byrack and McClure and Billy Hart, there I played only soprano, that group, for 8 years. So it was a challenge because I was worried about what I would do for the burning killing Take No Prisoners that you hear Train doing on Impressions. 20 versions of it available, more or less. So, but I never really imitated anybody on soprano. At least I didn't think about it. Tenor, of course I did. I did my transcription. I did the study of Sonny and Coltrane and Wayne. Those are the three main. It was like I never really sat down and did like a transcription on soprano. I never did it. So when I became known for soprano, it was a little bit of a surprise. But on the other hand, I had put in time, and it was a good decision, good call.
The soprano, the tenor, each different saxophone kind of lend itself to a mode of self-expression. That's undeniable because of the physics of the instrument. Do you feel that the music we play today would be somewhat or radically different if you were playing tenor?
Maybe some of the moods would be more enhanced. As much intensity as we had today, we could have more if you're playing tenor. Two tenors is Gene Ammons and Sonny Stitt. It's a standby two tenors. Eddie Lockjaw and Johnny Griffin, me and Steve. I think what we played today would have happened anyway, but we maybe would have been more intense even at moments, because the sopranos, you get to the high register, you got to be careful because you can overdo it. The tenor, when you get up to above F, and you use your throat more than that, and there's a little more variety in the upper register of the tenor. The soprano works in the low right hand. That's where the soprano is unmatched for beauty. I mean, Lacey said that. He said people play high and they play this shit. He said, what about the right hand? What about from F down? And it's something to think about when you're playing something like soprano, which is already high. And one of the challenges of soprano is to get rid of the shrieking, screaming, unpleasant music that can easily come out of soprano. One of my guys used to say, Liebman sounds like a pet store on fire. It's funny and true. Because there was a period when I was going for the altissimo and soprano relentlessly, and he was referring to. It was my bandmate, that kind of thing. But no, I don't think it would have been substantially different, just maybe intensity level.
Okay, good. Please go ahead.
Well, I mean, I guess this is a little bit unrelated to the project, but I know one of the things that the producer of the project wanted me to ask you about specifically, which is playing with Miles. And I guess specifically to talk about that in relation to this project, I think would be to talk about some of the things that you've been talking about already, just as far as like your lineage to this point in relation to the soprano. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if you could speak to that time at all, maybe even since you've already talked a little bit about playing with Steve Grossman and Elvin's band, and like, I don't know if you could even talk to the differences in playing in those two bands.
Well, first of all, part of the reason I'm not playing tenor today because we moved from Pennsylvania, and I just couldn't carry it and couldn't keep it together. You know what I mean? Because of my condition, and also, I couldn't keep up two instruments in an apartment house where I can't play anyway. So I haven't touched a tenor now since the endemic started. It's a year and a half, And I was enjoying tenor when I came back to it in '95. I was enjoying it, and I had found a thing on it, which I always had a thing. People said, "What are you stopping for?" I said, "I don't have a thing on it." He said, "Hey, you got a thing on it. Listen to this shit. Listen to the others, like who are copying the stuff that you did in the first place." But to be with Elvin, of course, that's Coltrane's drummer, and he was an ocean, universe, earth, everything you could think of that's vast and natural. He was. Besides being a great guy, having a lot of fun, a lot of experience. The guy had a wisdom beyond belief. You can imagine, he'd been through a lot, and that whole generation, they all had to deal with being black, getting paid shit, playing 3 sets for $10. They had a real rough time on how they even did it, the fathers, But that was their lifestyle. They meant it. They found that and they did it. Our generation became more schooled, more intellectual. We could explain the music. I could sit here and give you a primer on many kinds of styles of music and make you feel like you understood something. Because I'm a teacher, so I had to be, and I wanted to be. And so my generation immediately starts out with eclecticism. Free jazz, next minute Bartok, next minute Jimi Hendrix, the next minute Coltrane, next minute girls Bulgarian choir, Ravi Shankar, Nasrat Khan, and blah, blah, blah. we became very good at like incorporating influences from different musics, which had not been that way before. The guys played jazz, they played standards, blues, rhythm changes, and a certain format, which was fantastic. It was a way of playing that encompassed what was around us, because now you could get a record, you could go to a record store, you could find the Bulgarian Girls Choir. You couldn't do that so easily before. You had to find it, you had to walk, everywhere to find it. So the availability plus the desire to be stretching out on your own made the post-Delvin, post-Miles thing viable. Of course, with Miles, just in short, I mean, I was playing with the father, the head of the chief. That's what they call him, chief. They call him the prince or the chief. If you like him, he's the prince of darkness. If you don't, he's the chief, vice versa. And just being on the stage with Miles, of course, was a big deal. And, we played rock and roll. It was fusion. It was not one note of jazz. I mean, my solos maybe more than Miles. But that period was like, people were very puzzled. I was talking to Ivo about it. People were puzzled by what Miles was doing, and they didn't like it. It was, it was two guitars and congas and keyboard, and it was like and everybody dressed like Black Panther. The whole band was into the Black Panthers and had the equipment was red, green, and black, Yamaha equipment, everything like that. But that basically fusion kind of blew itself out eventually by the 80s, with exceptions, of course. But I am very fortunate and lucky that I had the occasion to play with Miles and Elvin, and also Pete LaRocca, the drummer. He was my first influence.
Deep.
Yeah.
Would you say, I'm really curious about sort of what you were talking about of I don't know if this is exactly what you meant, but sort of differentiating your generation from Elvin's generation and Miles, and that the two words that you seem to use to describe the two generations is intellectualism, and then with Elvin at least you were talking about wisdom.
Yeah.
And I just think that's such an interesting conceptual thing, and I'm just curious if you feel the same way about Miles as you do about Elvin, like that it was a similar kind of wisdom-driven thing.
I mean, Miles had a lot of sides to his personality, and he was tough, and he could be pigeonholed, and some things were tough. On the other hand, he had, he liked me. We had a good time. We spoke as much as he would speak. But he was, Elvin was like, he'd be sitting on the ground with you. You know what I mean? Miles, wouldn't come up. He was like a superstar in that generation. He was Miles Davis. Everybody wanted to see him once before he died, And what I got out of that, and also soprano, because soprano and trumpet have a lot in common. There's something about the positioning, the speed of the air compared to tenor or alto. And so I picked up a lot of things, ways of thinking that I had not thought of. I was 26 years old. I didn't have that experience. And now finally I go like, what the way he handled that. Think about that, Dave. Take that home for a minute. So I was, able to use what I was learning from the master of the trade. Very lucky for that in that respect.